am Christy Selvage. I'm the director of TAG here at Trevecca, and I want to give you some information about our upcoming TAG trips for 2025. We have our first trip is spring break, and we are headed to New York City, New York. And then our trip for the summer is in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and that happens between June and July. The dates are posted all around campus. Our deadline for registration is October 31st, just next week. And so I know this seems like last minute, but we just wanted to make sure that we get the information out to you. Both trips have fundraising opportunities. We will come alongside of you and help you with ways to fundraise, ways to raise that money, because we want you to be able to go on these trips. We have great training that's going to be provided. Those that are headed to Brazil are going to have the opportunity to partner with the church and do ministry all across the community in Sao Paulo. And those that are headed to New York City are going to have an opportunity to do urban ministry, international ministry, and immigration ministry. It's going to be a great opportunity to come alongside of some really great organizations that are doing some really cool things in New York City. I hope that you'll reach out and get signed up for a TAG trip in 2025 at klselvage@trevecca.edu.
Good morning. Good morning, friends. Welcome to chapel. As you're coming in, I am excited for this morning. As you can see, we've got a little bit of a different band set up today, so the music's going to be a little different. It's actually going to be something that I've been looking forward to all semester since the summer when we set this up. We have a special guest with us this morning, Jenny Black. Let's just go ahead and clap for Jenny right now. Jenny is actually a graduate of Trevecca's Master's in Counseling program. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, lives in Franklin, Tennessee. I was introduced to Jenny over the summer because she did a TEDx talk about our relationship with our phones and media trauma, which is a term that she actually coined after spending so much time with her clients and recognizing that there is a weight to this device that we carry around in our pockets, and it is the weight of the world. Everything that's happening in the world, we carry around with us, and that has an impact on us. And so she began to work on this and specialize in this area, actually wrote a book. We've got 3 copies up here, Our Digital Soul, and has started a podcast called Lose the Phone Podcast. And so we're going to hear some initial talk from her this morning. As she reflects, we're in the series on the Sermon on the Mount, and we're trying to find some creative ways into a few of those. And maybe on Tuesday you heard me mention that verse, the eye is the lamp of the body. And what we set our eyes on makes a difference on what happens internally in our spirit. And so she's going to just riff on that for a little while today and talk about some of the things that she's been working on. And then Miller Folk and Jonathan Roy from our counseling center, also a little applause here for them, are going to come up after she's done and have a little conversation with her and tease out a few more of these concepts. So I'd like to invite us to go to the Lord in prayer this morning, to just become fully present in the room together, to ask God to come and meet us here, and to open up our minds and hearts. So if you would, pray with me. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the day that you've given us today. We thank you for the experience that we are about to have. God, you have been preparing for this moment, and you have good things to share with us, wisdom to share with us, an invitation to a deeper life that you have to give to us today. And so, God, we pray for an anointing to be on Jenny and Miller and Jonathan as they share with us today, and that you would open up our minds and our hearts to imagine a way to be in the world that is more fully present with you, available to you, with our eyes locked in on you. We love you, God. We thank you for this time together, and we pray these things in the name of Jesus. Everybody said, amen. Let's give it up for Jenny.
Hey, guys. It is so good to be back here. I graduated from the Master's in Marriage and Family program in 2010. When I got back on campus, I was just had all this flood of memories come back to me. But one of my very funniest memories happened on this campus. I was in a class, and it was, how do vending machines work now? Do y'all have to have money, or do you have cards? Do vending machines exist, or do you just like think it and the food appears in front of you? So I had finally gotten to the point where I had prepped enough with all of my change, and I was going to have enough money to get a snack on break. We had our little break. I'm so excited. I've been thinking, what is my snack going to be the whole first half of class? And I walk in there, and they're hauling away the vending machines. And I was like, what? And they're like, sorry, these are being replaced or whatever. And I was like, I was devastated. That's devastating, right? And get back to class. I'm really depressed because there's nothing else you can buy out there in the world for whatever, $1.50. And next week, we get to class, and my professor says, so crazy, something happened. All of our vending machines were stolen last week. I watched the vending machines get stolen. I talked to the robbers. I just think that's hilarious. Okay, so I'm so excited about talking to you today. I can hardly contain that I only have this amount of time. I want to talk to you forever. I want you to know that every single one of you is a student in this conversation, and every single one of you is a teacher in this conversation. It is really fun to enter into a stream of education, basically, that no one is an expert on. I learn so much every time I give one of these talks, and I learn it because of what you tell me. So it's really important to me. I know you have something to say, and if it's in your heart, please email me, talk to me afterward. I want to hear what you have to teach me. Okay, so we are going to start with sort of one of my quotes that has gotten a lot of attention, is that I believe the most important relationship in your life right now is the relationship that you have with your phone. And for today's purposes, I talk a lot about smartphones, but for today we're going to talk about iPhones in particular. We're going to call them iPhones. And I'm not saying this because if anyone has an Android, you are not phone shamed. It's okay. It's okay. But the term iPhone is really, really, really important today, because the verse that we've been talking about, that you guys have been talking about, is the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. How great is that darkness? Now, I don't know how often you guys feel when you come to chapel services or when you're reading the Bible. I don't know how much people are talking about how relevant is this and how do we bring this sacred, holy scriptures into our current life. Well, are you ready? Are y'all ready for your mind to be blown? The iPhone is the lamp of the body. If your iPhone is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your iPhone is unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. How great is that darkness? Can you guys feel that? Have you seen things on your phone that fill your whole body with darkness? Have you seen things on your phone that fill your whole body with light? This is profound. This is incredibly profound. The way that the scriptures tie together our eyes with our spiritual health it was telling us secrets about the universe that we are just now connecting with the eyes and mental health. Do y'all get how profound this is? Like, show me, nod, raise your hand, make a movement. This is incredible that our eyes are this powerful. So I don't have a smartphone, I have a dumb phone. My phone, I can call and I can text on it, right? Guess what I don't do on my phone? I don't use my eyes. So the reason a smartphone is a smartphone is because it's a phone for your eyes. So that's a really, really important thing for y'all to connect with today. So what I want you to do is we're going to do a little experiment with your eyes. So pull out your phones. And I'm asking you, so often we're looking at our phones, we're thinking about what we're looking at, but what I'm asking you to do today is to look at how you're looking at your phone, okay? So I want you to look at your phone, just that normal way that you're always sneaking into conversations or whatever, just look at your phone, okay? Now see if you can have a moment where you pay attention to the way that your eyes are looking. How are your eyes looking when you're looking at that phone? And now I want you to kind of feel your body, because we leave our bodies when we look at our screens. So sort of see, what is my body feeling while I'm looking down at this phone? Just sort of have a moment of self-observation. We talk a lot about self-care. There is no such thing as self-care without self-observation. So take a moment for that. Okay, now I want you to power off your phone. Are y'all looking around like, is she punking us? Power off your phone. Put it underneath your seat or in your bag, but somewhere that is not on your body. I want you to feel your body without your phone, and without your phone having the ability to vibrate or ding or notify or tap you or yell at you or tell you you're beautiful, whatever your phone tells you. You should have a moment. Okay, now I want you to look around. I want you to look up. I want you to look down. I want you to notice 3 things about the space. I want you to make eye contact with somebody here, next to you, across the room. Notice people's faces. Y'all, do you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear it? That like very, very light, gentle, human connection. Now tell me how your body feels. Well, tell yourself how your body feels. So now take a moment. Just connect with your body. How does it feel? How does it feel? Whew. Okay, so your eyes, now I'm going to say again, the most important relationship in your life right now is the relationship you have with that device. For 2 reasons. The first one is because that device is teaching you how to see yourself, how to see other people, and how to see God. Right? It's also blocking you from how to see yourself, how to see the people around you, and how to see God. And if you all, I had a very visceral reaction to what just happened there because it was such a contrast. You know how many times we're in crowds right now and no one's even breathing? Right? And all of a sudden, hearing that sound, I almost felt like I was like in 1980 again. I was like, this is what it used to sound like in a crowd of people. So are you understanding 2 parts? It's not just that it is conditioning you to see yourself and to see others and to see God in a way that is toxic and unhealthy, but it's keeping you from actually seeing. Do y'all feel that? Could y'all see that and experience that in that moment? Okay, so when I say iPhone, today we are really, really, really focusing on eyes. And it seems from the scripture, right, that what God's telling us is that our connection to our eyes it's into our soul, right? Our eyes and our soul. The eye is the lamp of the body. But what I want to tell you about today are the physical issues we are having with our eyes because of our dependency on our screens. So, okay, there's a 6-year study that was done in China on elementary school kids. Every year, these kids get an eye exam. All the results are the same year after year after year after year until July of guess what year? July of 2020. They see this crazy spike in an eye disorder called myopia. What myopia is an actual elongating of your eyeballs. Eyeballs are elongating in these elementary school kids because, do you remember when you noticed how you look at your phone? Now just pretend, have your imaginary phone and show me the way that you look. Okay? So hours and 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 hours of those muscles focusing on that little screen, right? You can see why your eyes would be like, well, I think I need to develop this muscle a little stronger. And what muscle does it not need anymore? Peripheral vision, right? You're like, oh, I guess I don't need this anymore. Who needs to look around? This is apparently the most important skill set, and I have to develop it. So do you understand what myopia is? So it's like I have to overfunction here, eyeballs get elongated, this gets stronger, and this starts to disappear. You all, this isn't an elderly issue. Elementary school children. Now, I hope that this scares you just a little bit. We talk on and on and on and on about mental health issues, but if you can't see around you, do you realize you won't be able to go on hikes? You won't be able to build a house. You won't be able, the amount of jobs and hobbies and abilities that we have that we just take for granted will not exist if we don't have some balance in how much time our eyes are spending on screens versus the real world. Now, I don't know how many of you put this together, but I said July of 2020. Who remembers when COVID started? How long is that? How long is that? Less than 4 months. The World Health Organization is saying that by 2020, 50% of all humans on the planet will have myopia. I cannot imagine it will take that long, right? Doesn't that seem like 26 years? If it did it to these kids in 4 months, then what will it do in 26 years? Okay, that's important. I care about your eyes. Raise your hand if you care about your eyes. I mean, kind of a big deal, right? I don't even have to sell you on all the mental health issues. Let's just take care of your eyes. But guess what? Guess what? Myopia, the word we use in a common vernacular is called myopic. We say that someone is myopic when they are not thinking broadly, when they can't think into the future. The word myopic means you can't see the whole picture. You can't see the whole picture. So you get the spiritual connection. If our eyes are actually becoming myopic, so is our mental health, right? Mental health and trauma is when we isolate on the challenging thing and we can't see the whole picture. Are y'all following me? We get sick when we can't see the whole picture, right? Okay, we're having a conversation after this, so some of the things I was going to get to here, we're still going to get to. But what you need to know is that one of the most cutting-edge therapies for dealing with trauma, well, first of all, raise your hand if you understand that people are traumatized through their phones. You have some imagination of how that could possibly happen, okay? So lots of, well, we'll talk about this with you, Miller, later about the Boston Marathon bombing. So we'll talk about basically your phones can cause trauma in a very specific and different way than real life experiences trauma. One of those reasons is the myopicness, right? You don't see the whole picture. But one of the ways that we heal trauma is through a type of therapy called EMDR. It also has another version called brain spotting. And in EMDR, we mimic REM sleep. Raise your hand if you know what REM sleep is. It's like a tiny little science class. So REM sleep's your deepest sleep. It's when you dream, and the reason your brain waves go to this certain level where it helps you organize all the information that's in your brain. Does that make sense? So it's a deep sleep, it's a reset for your brain. Well, EMDR mimics that so that it can help people who've had traumatic experiences that are overwhelming their brain's ability to organize it, and you mimic it. So this is how it works in a very EMDR for dummies kind of way. Not that you're dummies, but EMDR being taught by in the dummy level. So take your finger in front of you, move it back and forth, and watch your finger. Guess what that is? That's EMDR. It's brain spotting, and it's also REM sleep. It heals your brain because your eyes are connected to your brain, and as it looks around your brain, it connects to all these different places in the exact same way you did when you did what? You looked around, right? So what's the opposite of that? Staring in one place. You're stuck in one place in your brain that gets triggered over and over and over and over again. So one of the reasons I came up with the word media trauma was because I was watching what we're doing, how we are looking at our phone is actually digging a deeper track for the trauma that is already in our body. And our phones, our iPhones, feed our trauma through our eyes. And as we're staying here, all it can do is feed the trauma. In order to heal from it, we have to turn it off, we have to put it away, we have to experience our bodies without it, and we have to look around. And as we're looking around in all of these minutes, it could be a second, it could be a minute, and my dream for all of you is that someday it's a whole hour, where you get to look around and experience your brain being able to heal itself, but also get a chance to actually use your eyes for what they're made for, right? Which is to see the beautiful place you live in, or to see the troubles that are in the place you live in so that you can do something about them, so that you can see each other and you can really see each other. And it occurred to me as I was writing this that one of the things that our eyes are not made for is looking at ourselves. It's exhausting. All of the times we're having to look at how do I look? How do I look? How did I look? Do I look? How do I look? Like I grew up in a world where we got pictures, 5 years after they were finally taken. You never had any idea what your hair looked like that day. We weren't made to look at ourselves at the level that we're looking at ourselves. We're made to look at each other. And in that space, when you get to see who you are when you're looking at other people, when you're looking around an environment. Like that moment when I said, can you be in your body right now? That's how you're going to find out how you're doing, not how you look back on your screen. So I'm going to read this one more time, and I want to just I want to give this to you as a blessing. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. So the one tiny little takeaway I'll give you right now before our conversation is if you want to change your relationship with your phone in 1 minute, when you do power your phone back on, change it to grayscale. The colors on our phones are incredibly exhausting to our eyes, and it's the equivalent of junk food like Skittles and you can even see, like if you go into the grocery store and you see Skittles and Starburst, it's that same kind of junk food, candy, sugary food, not real food for your eyes. When you grayscale your phone, 2 things happen. 1, your eyes immediately relax because it is not having to fight so hard to see. But second of all, those colors, so if you eat a bunch of candy, real food doesn't taste good anymore, right? Because it's changed your taste buds. Well, that's the same for our eyes. We actually, if you're on your phone a lot, you don't see colors in the real world anymore because this is real color. It's not artificial color. So when you change your phone to grayscale, it does not take very long at all before your world starts to brighten up with color again. And in some way I can't explain to you, if you absolutely insist on still being on social media, if you look at it in black and white, it says something to your soul that this isn't real. This isn't real. But where it's color is my real life, and it helps really change something in your experience of your real life versus your online life. So that's what I have for you. Come on up, lovelies, and we'll start our conversation.
Wow, that was, oh, sorry, Jonathan. Where would you like to sit? Jenny, that was amazing. And I'm laughing because all my notes for this conversation are on my phone. So, which is still powered off underneath the chair over there.
This is exciting for you.
You know, we're just looking around. Gosh, we've had these conversations through the years. I've gotten the chance to be in classroom settings with Jenny where she's getting to talk to graduate counseling students and kind of share this, and then also encourage them to be asking their clients about their relationship with their phone, because it is directly impacting their whole wellness, emotional, mental health, spiritual health, professional health. I mean, every aspect of it. So I'm curious about so many things, but I think the iPhone, wow, just to see that shift and in that verse. But you talk a lot about how we're receiving information and how our body is processing the information and digesting it and trying its best to integrate it, because that's something that we know that when there's trauma, whether it's really, really big or really, really small, happens, what happens in our brain is that it's fragmented, right? It doesn't get a chance to do that REM sleep, that integration. And so you mentioned the Boston bombing. And so can you tell them about that research study that kind of describes that in a really clear picture?
So there was a bombing in Boston in 2013, and someone thought to do research on how it impacted people who were there versus who watched it on their screens. And the research showed that people who saw the bombing on their screens were more traumatized than the people who were there. So they do not say this in the study, but from the work that I've done and even from the conversation that we've had today, y'all are probably starting to put together why that would be so. Because the camera's focused on this very one traumatic situation, right? It's myopic. It's a myopic vision of the worst. And you all know our phones are showing us the worst of humanity and the best of humanity, right? It's not showing ordinary. It's not showing all the stuff in between. Well, guess what? It's all the stuff in between that actually helps us make sense of things. And so if you were actually at the bombing and you watched it happen, first of all, very few people watched it happen, right? You had to be really close up right there. So you could be in the crowd and not even see it. You would see sort of ripples from it. But second of all, you also see that, yeah, there was one bomb and one bad person in this story, but you saw the thousands of other, like good people, helpful people, kind people, the people who were helped. And those kinds of moments that get us out of that myopic way of seeing are what we process in the moment, not just this traumatic element. Does that make sense?
Yes, and even with that, you say you see all the ordinary, the natural, and that's a lot of what we talked about is like this natural, what we're created to do. And when that happened, when those people saw the actual bombing or the side effects of that, their bodies tell them to go towards it, to lean in, right? And there's all these cortisol levels and adrenaline, yes, that's going and actually helps work through and their body process it. And if we're just sitting there and looking at our phone, we have the same chemical reactions are happening, but we don't do anything with it.
In fact, y'all all could probably reference the last thing you saw on your phones that was very disturbing, that caused you to have those chemical reactions that Miller's talking about. They're your emergency chemicals. And what do most people do? Do they like put their phone down and go for a run? Like, what do most people do? What do most people do?
You keep scrolling. And try and numb and look at something else, or you might switch over to your shopping app or your other things,
So,
but you're still looking at the
Jonathan,
screen.
what happens to that energy?
It lives in our body.
Which now we call?
Trauma. No.
It's true.
Yeah. And it keeps us stuck in this space. But I was also even thinking, as you were talking right now, of the headlines. When we're reading a news article, they're not this like calm, like, oh, an event happened. Like, there's this deeply inflaming, like, oh, I have to read this right now. I have to focus on this. Something else that you talked a little bit in another talk that you did was this idea of, like, in social media specifically, like, some of how they make their money is from how much we are looking at their phones. Can you talk a little bit about some of that and how that impacts us as humans?
I wish I don't know the statistic, but the people who actually make money off of social media, it's like winning the lottery. You know, it's about that range of real money, the kind of money that people couldn't get at any other job. And I talked about your phones on purpose today because I know that there is a lot of conversation about social media. Everybody knows it's bad for them. No one knows how to stop doing it. Everybody also sort of likes elements of it. So I don't talk about that very much now. But you're asking how to get work done on it, or are you asking?
Just more of like what impact does sitting and staring at our
Oh.
screen and reading all of that
Yeah.
have on our bodies?
I mean, okay, so I was at a coffee shop trying not to eavesdrop, but it's kind of my superpower. And this girl, she was like in her late 20s. She was engaged, beautiful person, and she's telling her friend, I don't know what happened to me, but I haven't had TikTok in forever, and I got on TikTok last night, and I didn't have to work that day. And so all of a sudden, I had lost 2 hours on TikTok. And she said, and I spent $150 on a hair product and I don't know, an outfit. I don't know what it was. I can't remember the two things. But I spent $150, and she said, I felt so bad. She's like, I actually felt sick. But she said, I felt really embarrassed about my own life. Like, why can't I do that? Why don't I look like that? Whatever. And she's telling her friend, I love my life. Like, I'm actually living the dream. I just got engaged. I'm planning a wedding. And she said it took her about an hour or two to feel like herself again. And she was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this. I thought it was no big deal. And like that, it's funny. We talk about people making money on social media. We don't talk about how much people spend because of watching social media. It's costly.
Yeah, and that's even kind of focusing on what you said earlier of like the not seeing color as well, of like when we're so intaking so much of other people's curated lives, like it makes sense that we start to have our own life feel pale in certain ways too. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, Jenny, we're working, you know, most of us are in the room are college-age individuals, young adults. And I know you've done work in the past with, in the classroom setting, speaking to real live college students. When you have these conversations in a smaller setting, what are you hearing from them when they start to say, ooh, okay, how do I have an intentional relationship with my phone? And what are the benefits of it? And what is the cost of me actually having a very not mindful approach to engaging with media?
So one of my dearest friends, I became friends with her because she heard me interviewed on a podcast. She taught at a very prestigious university, like one of the famous classes. She taught a class on happiness at this school. She emails me and she says, will you come and talk to my class? Well, I didn't, I was on the little Zoom screen, but it was really fun. I was actually on that screen talking to the whole class. Like they weren't on, weren't all on screens. I showed up like a robot. And, but she wanted her class, she had decided early on that she didn't want any phones or laptops in her classroom. And she said she didn't think much about the reason why, other than I want their full attention and concentration for the hour that they're in class. What a crazy idea. So she told them, you have to power your phone off and put it away before, as soon as you get to class, and no laptops, nothing. So it's just paper, pens. So in my class with them that I was supposed to come teach them, this is an example of what I was telling you at the beginning. I actually just ended up learning from them, what is it like for you to be in this one class without your phone? And she'd never asked them that question. And she got so much information. She's cataloged all of it. But basically, the most common word that she hears everyone say is refreshing. I leave this class feeling refreshed. They said they participate in the class because they feel like everyone's paying attention and no one is going to be like filming or like mocking them in any way, which I think it's interesting that phones can represent that. They said that the hour flies by. It's the only hour of their life. They don't watch every minute go by because most of the time they're looking at their phone every single minute to see the minute pass. But the thing I found the most fascinating is they said it's the most relieving hour because it's the only hour of my whole life that I can tell people I have a legitimate reason for not responding to them immediately. So I can say, oh, sorry, I was in my class, that I'm not allowed to be on the phone.
Gosh, wow, that's so powerful. I mean, to think of the immediacy that our body carries all the time. I'm sitting here thinking about the 25 unread text messages I have that I carry around, that almost shame, right? All these feelings and emotion, fear of when do I sit down and respond to them?
Well, and Miller, it's really important what Miller's saying. There's a lot of really traumatic things that can happen through your phones, and most of us either can imagine those or have experienced those ourselves. But what Miller's talking about is that it's like the tiny, like exhausting, overwhelming things that will still process in your body as trauma because it's still sending off all that cortisol and adrenaline into your body as if it was an emergency. And it's just the constant 25 texts.
Right, and it triggers my individual shame of, being a neurodivergent individual and always feeling like I'm trying to catch up in my brain. And so it hits shame in other real lived experiences. Just to think through the piece that you said, they just feel the release.
And even just the feeling of like, once upon a time, there was that like, if you needed to get a hold of somebody, like if there wasn't a voicemail and you called and they weren't there, you just had to wait. And now there's this like, oh, I have to be on call 24/7 days a week, like all of the time. Like there's never, like until you power it down, like you're always having this like, when I worked crisis counseling, like eventually I had to change my ringtone because when I would get that phone call, like my spike would, like my anxiety would spike because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to go travel somewhere and like deal with this crisis. And so like having that constant ability for people to have access to us changes how we live.
The ringtone thing's hilarious. No one's ever said that to me before, but I completely identify with that. And if I hear other people's ringtones, I'm just like, oh no. Yeah. It is. It's like it's an actual trigger.
Right. I can sometimes hear someone's ringtone as my alarm, and that really jars my system.
Exactly.
Because I use my phone as my alarm, which
right.
so dependent on it.
Right.
Jenny, the top 3 reasons people reaching out for sessions at the counseling center we see are reporting that they're feeling down, they're feeling lonely and withdrawn, they're feeling overwhelmed, and they're feeling fearful, and then they're struggling with a relationship. And so knowing that, how would you say that our relationship with our phone might be impacting some of those top 3 things?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that it isn't at the root of all 4 of them, because the problem with the world through our phones is that it's infinite. It's infinite. It's infinite overwhelm, it's infinite fear, it's infinite information, it's infinite connection, it's infinite affirmation. And we are finite creatures. We are limited. So anytime you put a limited being in a situation that has absolutely no limits on it, our natural response is going to be overwhelmed, fearful, and there was
Withdrawn,
and with-
overwhelmed, fear,
and withdrawn.
relationship.
Yeah, I'll do so you understand, of course you're overwhelmed, you're fearful, of course you're going to withdraw. That is such a natural response. And then of course with relationships, you all know, and I know I have helped many, many people get healthier relationships with their phones, but one of the phases of their healing is, but everyone in my world is still on their phone. Like it actually starts highlighting loneliness even more so when you get off of it, not because you miss what was there. No one ever misses what was there. They look up and they realize, oh, that's why I went there, because it's so lonely to be with so many people who are all on their phones. That's what I hear about kids all the time. They'll say, it's actually that I don't want to be on my phone, but I cannot tolerate what it feels like when everyone else is on their phone. So my hope, plea, my wish, and my dream for the future is that this work really does need to be done in community, because every single person would rather be talking to a group of people when they come in here, not just feeling alone all by themselves on their social media where someone else is definitely doing something better, right?
Gosh, I love that you talked about community, because I do think we are created to be in community. Even when we have those cortisol levels, those emergency chemicals that come out, a lot of that is about going towards connection, right? And to be able, I think a lot about like pseudo connection, and I think about my relationship with my phone, whether that be even texting someone that is a kind text that is encouraging, but it's still pseudo. It's not the same as sitting in front of someone and them having that real interaction, or even us looking around the room, right? And so the pseudo connection really can impact. It's only just gives us just a little.
So when we are with other humans, even physically in this same space, our bodies regulate itself based on the actual human bodies around us, and that does something to us. It does something to us that, one, heals trauma, but it also makes us resilient to trauma, so that when difficult things do come, they don't hit so difficultly and deeply, which is when we're in isolation, that trauma has a completely different impact. Because and that's another great example, even if we actually saw the same thing on our phones that caused an emergency reaction and anyone else was present, everybody would be like, oh my gosh, did you see that? There would be some sort of expelling of that energy, just connecting. Did you see that? Are you scared? Are we okay? Yep, we're okay. Or whatever. Or no, we need to go do something. That in itself is one of the healing elements.
Yeah, totally. Gosh. I could sit here forever and talk about this.
I know. We've only got a few minutes left of our time. But I was curious if, what would be some of those takeaways that you'd hope everyone leaving here today, how can we take care of ourselves in this space?
So the first thing I told you about was to grayscale your phone. There are a few times you'll need color or you'll want color, and you can set it up so you triple click, you tap it, and I can use color when I have maps on or whatever. But I promise you're going to love that very, very quickly. And the second one is spending the first hour of your day not on a screen. I have worked with very, very severe addicts whose life was dependent on healing their relationship with their phones. And we were able to start with 1 hour a day. So he would wake up, his first hour, it was just him and his world. He'd been collecting records for years, and ended up every morning he'd wake up, instead of getting on his phone, go to his record player and listen to records for the first hour of the day. If you wake up, I honestly don't care if you wake up and stare at a wall for the first hour that you are awake, it will heal you. one, it will heal you. Two, it will not, there's no such thing as a waste of time if you're not on your phone. There's no such thing as a waste of time if you're not on your phone, because almost every single thing that you experience in real life comes at you in at a human capacity that you can integrate it. So even if you are reading a book, that information moves so much slower than if you're, right, scrolling images, whatever. So I will say that again, almost everything you do in real life heals you. It doesn't mean that everything in real life isn't hard. Real life is very, 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 very hard. And that's another thing people start to face when they get off their phones. It's like, oh my gosh, because their real life has been neglected, right? Because every time it got hard, they escaped into their phone, which was an impossible, overwhelming, exhausting world that they were so worn out with that they finally put down, and then they're like, oh, and this is so exhausting. When you show up in your real life, you can make a difference in it. So I'll ask people, well, I'll do my third takeaway for now. I have lots more information on my website, and you can get that there. But the third thing I'll say is to start a list of what you would do if you had 24 hours without the internet, everything that you would do with 24 hours. And I've done this with groups of people from fourth graders to CEOs, and almost everyone writes on their list, clean their room. And they also write sleep. So when you move into the real world, all of a sudden you start making a difference in it. It's not infinite. It's limited just like you. And you get to start seeing that when I do something, it makes something good or bad happen in the real world. And it heals you. Both the good things, right? Like the hike in the park and looking around and talking through something with a friend. But also the hard things heal you too. Because they develop resilience and they develop trust and they develop your... My son broke his foot a couple of weeks ago, and he's had to live in this world where he's called everyone he knows. He just puts his, he'll send it to like the group text of the place he works, and he'll be, can anyone drive me grocery shopping today? And so over the course of these very, very hard 3 weeks, he has had friends that he like from all different parts of his life come pick him up and drive him to the store, and it would have never happened if he had his own, foot and car. Everything in the real world heals you. Everything in the real world heals you. And almost everything on a screen, while it may not be harmful, is giving you misinformation about yourself and your capabilities.
Gosh, yeah, it's so true. I think my last question is, I've thought about this since we had a class, I guess it was probably 2020, but you had some self-care questions, or just questions to touch base kind of with our soul before we go, because media is a part of our life. I mean, we have to engage in it, to engage with the world around us in ways, but what are some of those maybe couple questions that we can be intentional about engaging?
So all of us have our moments of anxiety, overwhelm. I'm not sure what's going on, right? Like everybody can kind of identify with that feeling probably multiple times a day. So I want you to kind of think of that moment as your trigger, whatever it is. It could be anger, but usually it's something a lot more like, oh my gosh, I'm just so stressed out right now. So the number one self-care tip is power off your phone. Put it in a drawer. And just for a second, ask yourself, what do I need? What do I need? That's like a year of therapy right there for free. Because your work is getting yourself to a point where you can ask that question, and then however much time you have to stay with yourself until you can answer that question, because you are the only one that can answer that question. I do this all the time. I barely get past 2 answers. I usually need to eat, I need to sleep. I need to take a shower. I need to go outside. I maybe need to call a friend. I've rarely found anything that isn't one of those 5 things. So there's your hack. It's probably one of those 5 things.
Love it. I love that question. What do you need? Gosh, thank you so much. We are at time, but I know you got some books here. So do you want?
Okay, so 70% of all books purchased are not read today. I have 4 books for 4 people who will actually read it. So if you are one of the first people who want a book and want to read the book, then come visit with me.
Great. Thank you so
Love
much,
that. Thank you
Jenny.
so much for
Thank you, guys.
joining us today.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Happy Thursday. And if you want a book, come grab it.